Welcome back for another Spiritforged 101 episode. Today we are on number 14, and this is the Spiritforged Mind Cards episode, part of our series covering all of the upcoming cards from Spiritforged. Like previous videos, this is likely to go a bit longer than our In Focus episodes or the game mechanic episodes, and it's going to be really focused in on existing comp or mind legends, so the blue legends, as well as the upcoming ones, and how the upcoming cards will slot in or produce new entire archetypes. Like the Fury and Calm episodes, I really want to stress that this is speculative. I'm looking at these cards and trying to gauge their homes and whether or not they have the capacity to like make a splash or whether or not you should be interested. This doesn't mean that they will necessarily end up in meta decks, although, hopefully we would be able to catch that. And like many card prediction episodes that other folks do as well, we're likely to get it wrong. There's a reason why there's, what we got wrong episodes at the end of Magic sets or One Piece sets. So, take everything I say with a grain of salt and feel free to point out inconsistencies or if I make mistakes. I've made a couple in the past, such as not realizing that Quick Draw also meant that equipment could be played at reaction speed. So listen, sometimes you get them wrong. So the plan for today is to sort of contextualize the stuff that I'm going to be talking about with the first, I would say like medium-sized organized event out of China, the One Step Cup, which was a 100-player best of one event. So, take everything in the context of like it's the first event. New decks are less optimized than older decks, and it's also best of one. But it can show us some stuff that's coming up or that's making a splash and decks that are sticking around. And then we can look through the origins legends for Mind. Some we've talked about, and I'll like discuss a bit more briefly than in the original videos. And then the new legends, and then we're going to evaluate some of the mind cards, well, all the mind cards, and I'll talk to you about some of my favorites. So the idea is to just go through all of these. So the oh well, small snafu with the slide. So the One Step Cup is the sort of first what I would qualify as like a decently sized competitive event for Spiritforged. 100 players is where I would draw the line. Like 32 to 50 is really like a big locals. But if you're getting over 100, you can sort of start to see some patterns, and people are playing a fair amount of rounds, and you can, get a sense of how decks perform consistently or not. So the top eight for the One Step Cup, two Ys, three Kaisas, one Set, but also one Draven and one Rek'Sai. So Kaisa and Yi still, sticking around, and I don't want to like talk too much about why that might be. Although my suspicion is their lists are just very optimized at this point, and new lists are not. So it's going to take a while to figure out. And also, sideboards are not present at this event, so that factors into the discussion somewhat as well. But out of the top eight, two spots for New Legends, Draven top four. And if you look at top 16, you actually get a lot more. You get another Draven, you get two Azir, actually you get two Dravens, two Azir, and one Sivir. And then Teemo and Victor as well, the top 16. So some interesting stuff. I'll leave the lists down below, so you get like a link to the Riftx competitive event. But some of the quick takeaways for me are, the old legends are still sticking around. It's not like Kaisa and Yi got shut out entirely. The variants of Yi are going to vary, and some might be off of Aurora due to the gear hate that's in the set, but Kaisa's still around even with a ton of deflect. And Draven, makes a splash in a big way, and notably is, overrepresented compared to Annie. So Historically, China was not as big on Annie as NA was, so that's factoring into this somewhat, but it's still a surprise to see Draven pilot the shell a bit better. So we'll have to see what that means for the Annie decks relative to the Draven ones. But, you know, Draven looks solid, which we kind of foresaw in the first video that we made about Spiritforged. And then you're getting like 7 new legends that have top 16, and if you actually push it up to 32, you're getting about like a little bit more than 1/3 of the decks are from Spiritforged. And that's just the legends, so a lot of cards in decks are changing as well. So the Spiritforged cards are strong enough on average to sort of enter the field and produce new deck archetypes. I'm personally super excited about Azir, but that's just because I love playing green yellow. So that's sort of what I'm taking away for this, and especially because some of the like mech cards, for example, are popping up inside of the Draven and Darius and Kaisa shells. So it's making me rate some of the mech stuff a bit differently, and also Rumble himself. So thinking about the Origins Calm Legends, I mean, the Titan at the top is still Kaisa. That's changed somewhat. It's not as uncontested as it was maybe a month or two ago. But it turns out that just having access to paying rune costs for your spells is just good all the time. And most of the Kaisa lists that I was looking at have tended to bring in the Ferris Cavalier, the 6-cost mech that's in red, and also 2 copies of Piercing Light. So she's still good, and she's getting some more tools. And I think her being as dominant as she is for spell decks really carves out a space for blue red, but also blue in general, and kind of the cards that will work well with Kaisa in the future. And around her, you kind of get like 4 heroes that I think have varying levels, or 4 legends that have varying levels of commitment to different deck archetypes. For example, I personally foresee Teemo doing well. He was in that top 16, and Teemo is getting a lot of tools in purple. We're going to talk about some of them, like Switcheroo, which are crazy. So Teemo just has the handle hold on the hidden archetype, and a lot of cards that are fine if you're not Teemo become very good all of a sudden. Victor, I think, is super interesting. Less from the yellow Victor side. There was an event about a week or so ago where I think like a no unit Victor topped out, and it was like a full like all gear all spell list where his legend ability was only used to field units that could hold, and I think the chosen champion unit was blue Victor. So much like Ezreal, he's getting in on that like play on the opponent's turn game plan, and just fielding a ton of removal, which is good. And Lux is sort of the dedicated spellcaster of these 5 heroes that wants to deal with larger cost spells. But unlike Kaisa, she can't really, pay for any of those costs. She rewards it with card advantage for playing big spells. Unfortunately, my sense currently is that we aren't really on decks that really want to play a lot of top end. Yes, you have your singularities, you have your time warps, and you have your watchers, but mostly what you want to see is a lot of cheap units, especially like your 9/2 drops that are in most decks. And so Lux often will have trouble contesting the board in those early turns. But she is the big spellcaster. And then Ari, really like a defensive hold based hero that wants to debuff your opponent's units. And also has been a bit suffering, I think, from Kaisa's dominance and the prevalence of like red removal spells. So, like 2 spellcasters, 1 non-committal unit generator, a defensive hero in Ari, and then a hidden unit. So blue actually has like I think one of the more flexible kind of color palettes, or like at least the blue legends have a lot of different abilities that you can play around with. So what do their mind they're not calm. I knew I was gonna leave a column in here somewhere. Anyways, what do the new Spiritforged Mind Legends do? So last week I talked about Ornn. Ornn pays gear costs the way that Kaisa plays gear costs, and not necessarily equipment costs. So really wants you to be heavy on gear, and has engines that you can like recur or cheaply use like Poro snacks. So Ornn, I think will have a place, and there's a lot of like like single unit strategies where you're going to stack a ton of deflect on your creatures and pile up equipment on them, and then run some amount of protection. So Ornn is really like your gear heavy deck, but most often that will be in a equipment shell. We talked about Rumble, and Rumble is the first of the tag or typal based legends. So he gives your mechs shield, and one of his champion units gives your mechs assault. So it just makes mechs slightly better. I think that's a really cool tag. My only issue is that right now, because we are very much in a spell-based meta, and that does seem to still be holding in China for now, Shield 1 is not a super valuable keyword, and there is a high chance that Rumble's strategy will just be played in Kaisa. If mechs become very strong and the Shield 1 is not a hyper relevant keyword, you will still accept that you're playing, mech units and then paying your spell costs with Kaisa's ability. But still useful. And then I think the two legends that I haven't had a chance to talk about yet, which are interesting, if not always promising, but have some really cool deck archetypes. So Ezreal Prodigal Explorer has exhaust at reaction speed. You can draw one, but only if you've chosen two enemy units and or gear twice. Units and or gear twice this turn. So you need to choose, one of each, or two units or two gear with your spells or unit abilities, and then you can draw an additional card. So Ezreal's going to want a lot of target effects, and there are a lot of them in this set. And Ezreal has some like pretty cool champion units. He, I would say, is somewhere in the same camp as like Lux and Kaisa, where he very much wants you to be playing a lot of spells, especially spells that target. And purple has been kind of a marquee color for like spot-based unit removal. So there's a lot to love with him. I'm not sure how good he's going to be in terms of the meta, but he's certainly going to produce some really unique deck archetypes, especially because Teemo has been so focused on hidden that blue-purple has not really been, like only played as a spell-based color. So I'll be curious to see what happens with him. And he has like one of my favorite champion units in the game. I think the purple Ezreal is going to be really good. And then you have Renata Glask Chem Baroness. So when you are an ally hold, you can exhaust this legend to play a gold gear exhausted. And gold pays for the rune costs, or like the power costs that are below the energy. And then if you're within 3 points of scoring, your gold also gets the ability add an additional like energy cost. So like she produces gold for you, and then it's going to make the gold very valuable. And there are a fair amount of cards that produce gold and that will reward you for it. This to me reads like an alternate version of Lux is like play big spells sort of archetype, but one that I'm much happier to get behind. And being within 3 victory points of the score is like a really scary time warp area where you do want that energy. So she might produce some like crazy combo decks in the future. Again, TBD for now, but very interesting stuff to play with. So what we have the new legends for are like equipment, mech, spell on opponent turns, and big spells, right? Which go along with the other spell-based stuff that we've seen before and some of the more defensive stuff. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the mind cards. And as usual, I use the Riftbound main website. So we're just going to go through them. from common to uncommon to rare to epic, and then finally I look at the champion spells. I will be recovering champion spells for Ornn and for Rumble, and we're going to be talking about like all these cards in context. I don't grade them. I personally don't feel comfortable doing that because I think the game is just very young and my clear sense of scaling is kind of off. But you know, we sort of try to cover them in the context of other cards that exist. So there's like not grading, but at least some evaluation. So first up, we have Aspiring Engineer. 3 might for 3 energy and 1 mind power. When you play me, return a gear from your trash to your hand. So the use case for this card to me feels like playing Purple Ezreal that discards a card to draw 2. You discard Scrap Heap and you can bring it back and you can replay it or rediscard it for other effects. 3 power for 3 might I don't particularly like. It dies to half of a Falling Star, it dies to Hextech, it dies to Void Seeker, and it costs a power. And early power costs, especially when you can't refill them, feel pretty bad. Obviously, if you're on a strategy that produces gold, this costs a little bit less and you can get some gear back. Right now, this looks playable to me, but not like something that I'm excited to have to include in a deck. So probably not something that you're gonna like see a lot of, and maybe will produce some you know graveyard like gear strats in the future. Second, we have Bubblebot, 3 might for 3 energy. When you play me, ready another friendly mech. So this is kind of a off-color, more situational first mate. First mate's fantastic, and this card will effectively be as good as first mate is, but in a very narrow range of decks. And its range of options is going to largely depend on how many mechs you run in your deck. So its benefit is that it's not an orange, and it effectively gives like you can either pull back a mech and then push it back into a different battlefield with like the ready as like a pseudo gank. We're going to see one of the big mechs later that gives ganking. You could theoretically like play that, ready it, push it into a battlefield, and then next turn it can gank. Or if it was already ready, you can send it into a battlefield and then use this to like ready it so it can go gank. And if you're on Rumble, there's like there's not an insignificant chance that this might defend for 4, which is definitely better than first mate on defense. Still dies to a lot of the same removal, but because it doesn't cost energy, I like this quite a bit. My sense with this is like it's going to be played probably as a 3 of in heavy mech decks, and outside of that, probably not as much, or maybe as a 1 of. So, decent with some very strong specific applications. Chemtech Cask is a 1 energy gear. When you play a spell on an opponent's turn, you may exhaust me to play a gold gear token exhausted. So I think this card is going to be good, especially in like Ezreal and Renata Glask and Blue Victor, probably. I think you want like 1 or 2. Drawing multiple of these is pretty hard because it makes gear, it doesn't draw you cards. So if you can't replace it, it gets to be pretty obnoxious to clog up your hand. But I do like it as a 1 of. And if this becomes like this is one of those cards that's super unassuming in that it's 1 energy, so your opponents are kind of loath to commit gear removal to it. But if they don't, and you get like 3 or 4 gold out of this, it's effectively like a bootleg seal that didn't burn one of your runes. It only tapped an energy. So I do like it, and I think in Renata Glask this also produces like better gold. So you're gonna like it a lot there. But I think you're going to play this in a lot of like spell-based blue decks for sure. Particularly if you're playing like Blue Victor or Ezreal. So I'm a big fan. Then we have the first equipment for blue. So 1 energy quick draw. So this equipment can be played at reaction speed and it auto equips. Otherwise, it equips for 1 mind rune and it gives shield 2 and 0 might. Nope. I am, yeah. It is shield 2. So this does nothing against spell damage. It's a defensive combat trick, and it theoretically, like, you can't counter it, but otherwise I find this to be like a pretty low impact card. 1 energy is like, it's hard to like say that this is terrible, but generally the blue units want like more might, and if it's defense only might, you're at a high risk of just getting like pushed out with a rebuke, or you die to like spell damage. So I'm not a big fan. Forecaster is another mech. It's got 2 might for 2 energy, and it's got your mechs have vision. So very much in that mech typal deck. So decks really want like a fair range of 2-drops. Forecaster giving most mechs the capacity to fix your draws is nice. I don't think this card is like super super crazy, but you're very much likely to play it in Rumble, where this will become like it's a stalwart Poro that also gives vision. In that case, it's fantastic. I think if the mech decks just end up being like eaten up by the Kaisa decks, or you're not playing like a ton of mechs, this like loses a lot of value. Although, if I understand this correctly, it gives itself vision because it is in play when like its ability would trigger. So I like it. The question is, how many of them do you run? And it's kind of fighting a little bit for space with the Plundering Poro that you can see at the bottom of the screen. But I think in mech decks, you're probably like prioritizing this. Stalwart Poro is a very good card. Daring Poro, its like inverse is also very good. So if you're like on a Stalwart Poro game plan, or if you're playing like the Rumble unit and you get to like push this in as like a 3 attack or 3 defense, you're happy. It gives you some vision, so it can fix like dead draws. I like this a lot. Solid to good is kind of like where I would put this. Frigid Touch, give a unit -2 this turn, and then it's at reaction speed, and it's got a repeat of 2. So this is like an inverse on guard or discipline without the draw, but you can pump it to a -4. Obviously, like its use cases are Blue Victor and Ezreal, and maybe in the late game Renata Glask. I like it for those decks quite a bit because it will give you, in Blue Victor, it's going to give you a recruit, and in Ezreal, it's going to give you like half of a card if you can trigger something else. And -2 is not a bad might score. So I do like this. I think it's really starting to, lean into those like non power cost cards. And the fact that it doesn't have a power cost is really relevant to this. Like, it's solid. I think its main like comparison point is like Stupefy, but Stupefy being 1 and drawing you a card makes it just so crazy. You're probably likely, if you're just playing like like the 38 or the 39 spell Victor deck, to just play this and also play Stupefy. So really good. And the fact that it can -4 for 4 is going to be relevant some amount of the time, so I like its modality. This I like. That I would much rather, for example, like pay the 1 extra and debuff my opponent's unit than have like the cloth armor shield 1, a shield 2 for 1 less. Yeah, most definitely. Then we have Frostcoat Cub, 3 might for 3 energy. You may pay an additional mind as an additional cost to play me. When you play me, if you pay the additional cost, a unit gets -3 this turn. So if you pre-ping something and then you give it the minus, it will still have the damage before combat, so you can like, like 1/2 something. Minus it's actually -2, sorry, not -3. -2 on a 3 cost body is fine. This is otherwise kind of like a vanilla card, but I think playing this as like a combat trick early is like unduly taxing, right? Because you're paying that energy on like turn one, presumably on turn two, so you can go fight whatever you're minusing. I'm not a big fan. I don't think Frostcoat Cub is all that strong, and its energy cost is not appealing to me. I would much rather keep spells up than have this. Then we have Gearhead, 3 might, 5 energy. Ooh. Accelerate for 1 extra and 1 mind power. Each weapon attached to me gives double its base might bonus. So it's in blue, and the question would be like, what are some of the other minds? So experimental hexplate gives 1, and then it's going to be like an Orn's equipment, or something like Brutalizer or Sterex Gauge. I think this is just like too overcosted to really see that much play. Like, in what world would I rather play this over just like Ornn himself or an Aurelia or something else? This might be like a draft card for like the weapon archetype, but other for like equipments, but otherwise, this looks pretty bad. Um, it does have accelerate, but it's awkward with accelerate because you're gonna pay 6, and then you need to equip it with something, so you're burning like a lot of runes. You know, like let's say you are playing this, paying the 6, burning 1, and then you're equipping like a leftover Sterex Gauge for another 1 power, uh, and you get like an additional 6 power on this. It's a 9. You paid like 6 energy and 3 runes for a 9 power accelerate unit. That just does not seem sufficient for me, to be worth. If this was like 4, maybe, but at 5, definitely not. Plundering Poro, 2 might for 2. When I conquer, play a gold gear token exhausted. Fantastic. Gold is super valuable for spell decks, which blue and red already are. Evidently, this is going to be like a pretty good inclusion in most Kaisa decks, but you're going to be happy to play this in Renata, in Ezreal, even in Lux to an extent. 2 cost bodies are well in demand, and if this conquers even once, you get that gold token. You can pull it back and then conquer again, get another gear. I really like this. It produces value pretty reasonably. Um, you know, it's not draw like a traveling merchant is, but its comparison point would be the treasure seeker. I'm pretty sure it's treasure seeker that's in purple. Sorry, this is like skipping ahead. I need to double check my math. Yeah, when I move play gold, you're exhausted. So Treasure Seeker has 1 less power and will do it not only on conquers but on regular moves, which is, I think, slightly better. But this card is good, and blue decks are going to be happy to play a ton of this. Its Poro tag is not inconsequential either, as if you're playing this in like Ornn, you get to play this and Lonely Poro and Stalwart Poro and Poro Herder, and then you can like get a lot of card draw, gold, defensive stats. You're reasonably happy with all of that. So sometimes the Poro thing will matter, but even if it doesn't, you're going to be like pretty cool with just getting a gear out of like the 1 conquer this thing gives you. Wages of Pain. 3 energy for a spell. Its action speed, it deals 3 damage to a unit at a battlefield, and you get a gold gear token, and it can be hidden. I love this. In Teemo, this thing costs 1. And in most other decks, you can just hide it for a like a rune that semi replaces itself with a gold token, and it's 3 damage. So you're going second. You can straight play this as like a Hextech Ray-ish kind of card, but sometimes it'll be much better. And with hidden strats, this is going to be like a really good card for Teemo and kind of a solid to great card for most of the people. I think the blue Victorless that topped an event that was a bit smaller in China ran like 3 of this. I'm like happy to check this out. Like, if I look at the like top Kaisa it's not running it. And the second Kaisa is also not running it. So maybe the indication is that it's not good enough to be played in like Kaisa, but in like Teemo maybe it is. Where was the Teemo deck? Yeah, there we go. Top 16. Ride. Consult. Oh, it's not even played in Teemo. Well, maybe my estimation's wrong, but this card still feels like the nuts to me. So we'll see. It is higher cost than like Hextech, but you're going to be happy to play this for one a lot of the time, and hiding it with like an Ember Monk is already pretty good. So I'm happy to be proven wrong, but this looks like a good card to me. Then we have Breakneck Mech. This was the mech I was talking about. 7 might for 8 cost and 2 energy. It gives your mechs deflect and ganking, so it is itself a 7 cost deflect ganking mech, and it enters ready if you have another mech. So this card is effectively like a 7 cost with 1 energy that is like auto accelerated under certain circumstances, and it gives deflect and ganking. I like this less than I like the Ferris Cavalier, which I think is just like a crazy card. But I think in the mech lists, if you are against some like mid-range spell-based decks, you might play like one of these. 8 and 2 is like a super steep cost. Eight cost cards are very expensive. Like every point above 6 becomes increasingly expensive, because whereas like 6 cost cards you might accelerate into very quickly, or if somebody's playing like the +1 rune battlefield, that's like a turn 2 situation. 8 requires you to either not really play a lot of power costs, or to ramp pretty heavily, or to be at 8. And it also requires like another mech on the board. It does have deflect and ganking itself, so it can only be so terrible. But this looks pretty middling to me, and I think especially the way that Rumble wants to play is take advantage of his shield keyword. So you're probably like sitting your mechs in like some pretty rocky situations earlier than this would like them to be. So not my favorite, but also not like unplayably bad. But definitely like this is either a sideboard card or a one of. Double drawing this early is like really brutal. Would be my sense. Then we have drop order. 4 might for 4 energy. When you play me, if you control 2 or more gear, ready me. So a 4 cost accelerated unit, some amount of the time, but it needs you to play some gear. You are in colors that make gold, so a lot of things like the Poro and the Cask are going to make you gear. So the question is, if this was just like a 4 cost accelerated unit for 4, how good would it be? Answer is pretty okay, but the problem is its cost is like pretty awkward. In that like turn 1, you're likely not going to be able to field 2 gear unless you're like on double cast or something. And then like that means like on turn 2 you need to produce some gear to like make this come in readied, which this card looks awkward to me. I'm not saying it's not going to be played, but so far like the hoops you have to jump through to make this like really like a 4 cost, rush card at 4 is a bit too high for my taste. Experimental Hexplate. Well, speaking of 1 cost gear, +1 and 1 energy. I am a mech, which ostensibly can only matter to like Ferris Cavalier, to the not the Cavalier, the Breakneck Mech, and the Forecaster, the Bubble Bot, and oh my god, to Rumble himself and the Champion Rumbles. This just looks like too low impact. Like the thing is, being a mech is the only tag that currently matters, but you're likely to just play mechs instead of playing this. Which, yeah, like if you're in Rumble, this reads like +1 shield 1. And some amount of the time it'll be +1 shield 1 assault 1. I'm not like convinced by this at all. Pickpocket. 3 might for 3 energy. When you play me, you may kill a gear with energy cost no more than 1 energy. If you do, play a gold gear token exhausted. So this kills gold and seals, and sometimes it'll hit like a scrap heap or an experimental battle plate or some small removal. It can't hit. It can't. It definitely can't hit Aurora. I don't think it can't hit scrap heaps, and it can't hit Hook. Yeah, it's not it. It'll be like a vanilla 3 might for 3 most of the time, and some amount of the time it will kill a seal and produce you a gold, which is going to be great. If we get to a meta where like every deck is playing seals and you're on Renata and it matters enough, this card might become like side deckable. I don't really like it. And 3 remains like the awkward power, like the might where you die to like half a falling star, which is still relevant for sure. Speaking of 3 might and 4 energy and 1 mind power for Prize of Progress, which is a unit. It is a mech, and when using activate ability of a gear, you give it +1 this turn. I'm out. 4 cost and 1 energy is like really bad for 3 might. This will sometimes have 4, but that also implies that your gear can like respond to removal. You're gonna get like blasted by pretty much everything and like be down a rune. Awful. Production Search. 4 cost, 4 energy, and 1 power. This costs 2 less if you control a mech, so 2 energy and 1 power. And you play a mech and you draw 1. So it's reasonably okay in mech decks to make more of them and also to draw you a card. Blue often has like pretty good draw, but you would be fine like drawing this late. I think drawing this early is not good. Like going down an energy super early in like a unit based deck that really wants to play a lot of stuff on the board is, pretty rough. And it wants another mech on the field, so you're not going to really want to play this in like a gold deck. This is really like it's like a weird Kaisa card where you get like a 3 cost unit for and draw 1 for 4 energy. And arguably it's better there than it is in Rumble because the energy cost is less of an issue. Like if I was playing a 3 power unit that drew 1, it would be like a slight like an upcycled lecturing Yordle. Yeah, there I would play it. I would play this in Kaisa. I would maybe play it in Rumble, but in Kaisa, if you can make this like a 2 cost 1 energy, like get a mech and draw 1, then you're in business. So slightly narrow applications, but I wouldn't be surprised to see like a copy or 2 of these in more mech heavy lists in blue red decks, and especially Kaisa lists. Speaking of more spells with energy costs, 4 energy and 1 mind. 1 mind. It has repeat for the same cost, and it gives you choose 1, deal 4 damage to unit at base, or kill the gear. So this is like the inverse of a lot of other cards where you can hit battlefields but not base. This can only hit base but not battlefields, which means sometimes you're gonna really love this if you're hitting your opponent's like pre-planned strategies. Obviously, this is kind of like a mirror punish for Kaisa, like using Reaver's Row and going back to base. And some amount of the time, the gear removal will be worth. This looks more like a sideboard card for Kaisa decks in Kaisa decks for me. That's kind of it because Kaisa already runs like a lot of very good removal, and I kind of don't like this in like I don't like it in Lux. I'm not even sure I like it that much in Renata, where you can play things like Hidden Blade and Cull, and pay those energy costs with gear. But there I might be convinced. So I don't know. okay, but really it is more like an answer to gear for blue. The problem is all the blue decks that would want to play this already have like access to pretty good removal. Maybe Ezreal. Although actually not even. It's not even like an action or reaction speed. So yeah, I don't know. I'm like not convinced. I'll say that much. Temporal Portal. Now this is my kind of card. 3 energy. It's a gear, and you get to pay 1 of any power, exhaust it, and give your next spell repeat, equal to its cost. So you have to replay all the other costs. So Temporal Portal, I think, is truly like a blue Victor card that you play like 1, or like Ezreal where you pay 1. And then sometimes you will be playing spells that have no rune costs, and you're happy to well, actually it's not even like an Ezreal thing, because you have to do it on your turn. You're gonna be happy to play certain spells that you can double up. So like if you just look inside of blue already, like double Wages of Pain is fine. Double Production Surge, if you're like on a mech already, is like pretty neat. You're drawing 2 cards. And Frigid Touch is already got repeat, so you don't need it. And then that's like it inside of this color. Um, Premonition, it would cost you so many resources. So you're using this with like Stupefy, and you might use this with like Disciplines and something in like an orange shell where you can pay the cost a bit more easily. So it's like weird because you want it to play at the speeds that like Victor and Ezreal would want to play, but it actually plays a bit better with Ornn than anything else. And sometimes if you're playing spells that will make you back um, like gold, you might want this in Renata. It's like cool. I'm sure somebody's gonna break something with this at some point, but I wouldn't want like more than 1 in a deck. And it may be the case that this is like a win more card where it feels super unnecessary or like dead in your hand a lot of the time. And then when you're ahead, it just like crushes people because you get to double spell like your late game, and you like double up Singularity, and you like destroy 4 units and you just close the game. So it'll have some like use cases where it feels soul crushing, and others where you're like, it's doing nothing for me. Okay, and now we're moving on to the rares. So some champion units, some more spicy stuff. Bard Mercurial, 4 might for 4 energy and 1 mind. You may exhaust your legend as initial cost to play me. When you play me, if you pay the additional cost, move any number of your units to an open battlefield. So there are legends that don't require you to exhaust for the effect. Renata doesn't need you to exhaust, right? No. Neither does Rumble. Ezreal, Ornn, somewhat mixed. Ari, no. Lux, no. Teemo, mostly no. Victor and Kaisa, yes. So you get to move a bunch of units into a battlefield and start a fight in blue, a color that notoriously is not super assertive. But you have to exhaust your unit, and you can do it with Renata. Sometimes this is going to be good as like a worse first mate. But I feel like the application's pretty weird, and the fact that it has the power cost built in on it when you're trying to play this in like bad positions, it's going to feel pretty bad. I'm not a big fan, but moving multiple units to an open battlefield can be useful. It's like weird because it's open, so you can't even like go attack somebody who's like holding a point and like blow them out. Yeah, I don't know. This doesn't look good to me, unfortunately. I wish it did, but it doesn't. Bellow's Breath. 1 energy and 1 power. Deal 1 damage to up to 3 units at the same location. It's at action speed, and you can repeat it. Oh, so this card is hyper punitive to go wide strategies with 1 cost units. So something like Victor really hates this card against it. If you double cast it, like if you're Kaisa, for example, and you double cast this for 2 energy and only 1 mind because you're paying the other one, and you get to deal, 6 damage to like 6 units, or like 1 damage to 6 different units, or any combination of 3 to 6, 3, 4, 5, or 6 units with like differentials. You will sometimes find board states where this is like crazy and like 3-for-1's your opponent, and other times where you can like get 1 unit or 2. It gets some amount of praise for me for being in blue, a color that does not have like straight access to damage all that much, and so like the combination of like minus effects with this is going to be somewhat useful. It's hard for me to tell, and I think this is really going to depend on how the meta shakes out between the kinds of units that are out. If we go into a meta that has an enormous amount of small units holding fields, then this is going to be great. It can hit in base, unless base is not a location, and somebody can enlighten me on this. If it can hit in base, it gets some points for that too. If it can't, because locations are only battlefields, then I'm like less in. It's like a fine card. Again, a Kaisa card if I ever saw one. But I think sometimes you'll run this in blue decks if you really need the board wipe stuff. So, some amount of value there. Then we have Card Sharp. 3 might for 3 energy. When you play me, you and each opponent may play a gold token exhausted. For each opponent who did, you play an additional gold token. So often this will be used at a time where your opponent will benefit from getting their gold token first, and that can be somewhat of an issue. It does produce 2 gold tokens for you, and it's at 3, and if it gets removed, you're still like sitting on 2 gold tokens afterwards. It's pretty good, and I like it, I think, especially for spell-based decks like Kaisa, like Ezreal, and like Blue Victor. I especially like it for Renato, where like the gold gets much better later on. Um, and it'll like fuel some of your spells too, which is not inconsequential. I like this quite a bit actually. Card Sharp is okay, even if it gets removed, which is really like the case for most of these, is like you're giving your opponent's on Kaisa, you give them a gold, they have like a free falling star, or like a no energy, 2 energy, no power falling star. That cleans up this and maybe hits something else, but you're still up like 2 gold. It's good. I just like be aware of who you're playing it against. Symmetrical effects can sometimes hurt you more than you think. So, like, I could go either way on this. And then we have the first of the 2 Ezreals. So Ezreal dashing, 3 might for 4 energy and 1 power. When I attack or defend, deal damage equal to my might to an enemy here. It doesn't deal combat damage, and he has action, move me to your base for 1 power. Notably does not have accelerate, but Ezreal is in purple-blue, so you can ride the wind this into a field, get his ability, and then if you get an action window, I'm pretty sure you get an action window actually, like after his effect. If like things really don't shake out the way you want, you can move him back. So it like moves around a lot. 3 is slightly low for the same reasons that we've been talking about, but he can like eke out some removal, and cards like Card Sharp will make him quite annoying to deal with. I think he's the lesser of the 2 Ezreals by like a wide margin, but I wouldn't be surprised if he sees play in his own deck or not. It really depends on how much spot removal is going around. You can effectively like trade up a little bit, but it's gonna cost you. Well, actually, no, because he's not like Yasuo. He doesn't deal damage, and then his own combat, he only deals his damage as like a spell ability. I'm not super impressed, unfortunately. He just suffers from having a much better alternate champion unit. Hextech Anomaly. Okay, so this is one of those cards that people will like make their entire year rotate around. 3 might, 3 energy, and 1 power. Exhaust at reaction speed to play any amount of rune, to pay any amount of rune to add that much energy. So you get to burn a ton of your runes to add like spare energy. Somebody's gonna do some degenerate stuff with this and like time warp, so you can like time warp back to back, where it's gonna feel like you're absolutely like locked out of the game. And sometimes you're going to be able to burn excess runes late in the game to produce a lot of spell energy. I honestly, like, this is a card that's hard for me to evaluate. I leave it to much more experienced players to tell me how they feel about this, because this looks to me like a combo engine, but I don't know what the payoffs really are for it. The energy doesn't have to be used for spells, so at a certain point, this just becomes like a mana rock in the Magic the Gathering sense. Like if you're late enough in the game, you could like theoretically exhaust like 10 runes, burn them all, exhaust this, make another 10, have like 20 energy worth of power, dump a bunch of like expensive cards and completely blast your opponent. But then sometimes you're just not going to be able to really like capitalize on that. It looks to me like the delta between like this not doing anything and this like being like amazing is just like way too high. So I don't know. I'm skeptical, but I can be convinced that this is like amazing. Jace champion, not champion. Mana Progress. 4 might for 4 energy. When you play me, you may kill a friendly gear, which will include gold. If you do, you may play a gear with energy cost no more than 7 from your hand this turn, ignoring its energy cost. So yeah, you can play Hextech Anomaly. You can play most gear. And you can play the Armory, which is really the combo that people are going for. He effectively gets to ramp you by 3 energy at the cost of sacrificing another gear. Some gear is fine with being sacrificed, the gold especially, I think. So this thing is going to definitely break some combo decks in the future. 4 might is also very good, and he inherently doesn't cost energy. So imagine you're playing like Plundering Poro, you send it somewhere, it conquers, it dies. The next turn you play this, you sacrifice Daring Poro, and you drop like Armory, which is the yellow card that we're going to talk about more in depth, the Vanguard Armory. And now you can just start like playing 3 recruit tokens a turn. I think this card is like a bit, unrealistic in terms of like the kinds of setups that you can find with it. But when you get those setups, it will like fully break the game. And this is the kind of card that will, for every time we're going to see a gear printed, so long as this card is legal for play, that costs 7 or less, somebody's going to ask the question, can I just play it with Jace Mana Progress? And if the answer is yes, you're probably going to see some decks that do that. Blue is also a color that draws a lot, so it's not like if you don't play him on turn 2, it's wasted. Often you're going to like get some value out of it. But he requires like some specific hands. He reminds me a lot of like when people are, talk about like Darius and they say, well, if you have like Seal plus Vanguard Captain, Darius has like an amazing opener. It feels kind of similar where this is like, well, if you have this and like a token make like a gear or a token maker, and you have Vanguard Armory and you have like those 3 cards where you're gonna make like a 4 cost that also produces like 3 recruits, and every turn you produce 3 recruits. If it happens, the sky's the ceiling, but pulling it off is a bit harder than it looks. And this is something that we should evaluate equipment against, especially in blue, because if the equipment is good, or if you can do things with it, then he might see some play in Ornn as well. And then the big boy himself, Ornn Forge God, the rare, not the epic. 6 cost for 4 might, deflect 2, weapon master, and +1 for each friendly gear. So deflect 2 means people will need to pay 2 power every time they choose them with a spell and ability, not you, the opponents. And when you play him, you may equip an equipment for 1 power less, even if it is already attached. Notably, if equipment is already attached, you can't detach it, unlike you can in Magic, so Weapon Master does have that utility. And Ornn has his own equipment that is crazy good. Evidently, this card, we talked last episode about Spellsonger. This is the Spellsonger like body where you get to like +2 per gear, and 2 Spellsongers each give you +2 gear, and he's like a or like 1 Spellsonger gives +2 because it copies his effect, so he's like a 6 might deflect 4, and then you just keep like doing more stuff with him. That combo to me looks fantastic until somebody plays Call the Weak and Ornn is your only thing to sacrifice. If you can like keep some amount of bodies around him and he's protected against that, deflect 4 is really, really hard to interact with. Effectively, if somebody decides to pay that cost, I think they probably lose the game. And otherwise, he has functionally like cannot be targeted, which there is an orange card that has that ability. I like him. He makes all your equipment better. He produces some really crazy board states with specific equipment pieces. Like, he's the reason to play Ornn more than the green Ornn is, who can like whiff on card drawing. This card is like great. He is the archetype for me, and if you are playing Ornn, this should probably be your champion unit. And you know, watch your opponents squirm when you play this, especially if they're like Kaisa and they are threading that line of not paying runes. Crazy stuff. World Atlas is an equipment, +2 might for 3 energy. When I hold, play 2 gold gear tokens exhausted. So notably, if you're playing like Ornn, it would make him like a 7, and he holds for 2 gold. Too many World Atlas, I think, is a bit greedy, but 1 I would not hate, and this will produce gear, and you can use this will produce gold, which can then pay to re-equip it to other units, and it kind of forces your opponents to interact with it. I like this. It's marginally like expensive. If this was 2, I think it would be like absolutely cracked. At 3, I think it's okay. But you know, in Ornn you will play this. In Renata, you will probably play some amount of this and force your opponents to trade shit into your smaller bodies so that you then like re-equip it. And if they don't, then your gear just gets like your gold just gets like crazy value. So it's pretty good. Okay, Premonition. 2 energy, 3 power, reaction speed, draw 3. This is a card that you absolutely cannot play at the start of the game, or you probably like destroy your own capacity to even play the cards that you're drawing. But in the end game, drawing 3 is such a good effect that this card will see some amount of play. In Kaisa, where this is evidently its best home, 2 power and 2 energy to draw 3 just refuels itself. It's certainly expensive. Like it's probably too expensive to ever like really see play. In Renata, you can use gold to pay for it. In Ezreal, you're not targeting, so you probably don't like this as much. Teemo, you just like burn way too many runes. And Victor, you know, it's debatable, like a 1 of. Probably a 1 of. Not in Kaisa, but maybe even in Kaisa only a 1 of. But draw 3 is really good. You just cannot like afford to double draw this early, so it is like a 1 cost card. Potentially a sideboard card to go over decks that also draw a lot or that go late by just like overwhelming them. Then we have Renata Glass Mastermind. So 4 might for 5, and 1 energy, 1 power to draw 1. 4 energy, 4 power exhaust, score a point, and you can only use her abilities when she's at a battlefield. So for those of you who don't know, her ability is tagged, can only be used as a battlefield. However, her exhaust ability is not tied to that clause specifically, and so if you're using something like Heimerdinger, you can score even if she's in base. That is a really greedy and specific deck that I don't think is like what we should grade this on. Um, I think like if this were like a 6 cost, 1 power, 4 might, draw one, you'd think this was a bit under the ceiling. But some amount of the time, you will play this like late with like 9 power, and you'll have like a battlefield, and you'll just be able to score a winning point, which will produce an effect that is quite similar to Time Warp if your opponent is tapped out, and that is good. Which leads me to, believe that Renata Glass, this version of her, the blue version, will be good. Uh, Otherwise, like, what can you do with this? Basically, if you're at 5 points, her first ability is played off of gold, now producing 1 power and 1 energy, so you can like trade your gold for card draw. She's like a quintessential go late hero, like champion unit that will just close the game in controlling shells, and that's worth a lot. Um, I think otherwise she's a bit underpowered, and she suffers from like that 5 cost 4 might like Yasuo, purple Yasuo's like placement where like he can produce points under very specific circumstances. I think her circumstances are slightly less crazy. Um, Although she doesn't come in readied, so you can't like just play her and immediately exhaust her at a battlefield. You kind of have to like play her at a battlefield, protect her for a turn, and then you can score. So the second clause is like virtually never relevant, but the first one is. If this was just like a 4 might 5 cost that traded all your gear at 5 and up 4 cards, or below that it made all your gold, not your gold, 1 energy, pay 1 energy to draw a card, would you do it? That's just probably yes. I don't know how many you're playing of her, but she looks good to me, and I'm sure somebody will play the stupid Heimerdinger deck, and you're gonna like see some really stupid things happen. And our almost last card, Blue Rumble. So Rumble Scrapper, your mech have +1, including me. So he's theoretically a 5 might for 5 and 1 energy. And when he holds, you play a 3 might mech token to your base. 5 is good, and he makes your other stuff better. We know how good Trifarian War Camp is, and it's not. He doesn't have to be at a battlefield, and he does need to be the one holding to produce the mech. But when you play him, if you play him to your base, he will still make your other mechs stronger. I like him more than I like the red Rumble for sure. Um, and I'm happy to play him in Rumble for certain. I don't know if he's going to see play outside of that, but if you are in the mech deck, you certainly want to play him for sure. And crucially, like his mech that he makes is a 4 might. So, let's say on turn one, you're like your second player, right? So you get 3 runes, you play a 2 might unit, you send it in. You're on Rumble, so you send in like the Vision mech, and it holds on a point because your opponent can't like immediately take it because you have Shield 1 due to your Legend ability. And then on the next turn, you play Rumble. He's at 5 might. He's got Shield 1 because of your Legend, so he is a 6 on defense. And then if he holds, you produce like another 4. He just like starts getting bigger, and he holds down a point. He wants to like produce a blue hold deck. Time will tell if he can do that. Evidently he still has the, clause like dies to Falling Star, which is pretty brutal, but it takes a full Falling Star to get him out. I quite like him. I find him less like gambly than the red Rumble. And of the two, I like him the most for certain. And his ability is not conditional, like his +1, unlike the other ones, which will mean like a lot of your mech will certainly like it. He pushes like the bubble bot. Was it bubble bot? Yeah, bubble bot goes up to 4, and then all of a sudden, like bubble bot can't be removed that easily. Forecaster's at 3, so it fights a little bit better. Breakneck mech, I still think is like pretty risky. Prize of Progress, not that exciting. Production Surge gets a lot more exciting because then it's like 2 to produce a 4 cost, and you draw 1. Yeah, I like him. I don't think he's as crazy as like Blue Orn is in their own deck, but he is like really solid. And the last blue card that we have is Zero Drive, 3 energy, for a 1 energy and 1 power to equip equipment. And it has a couple of things, right? So it has +2 and Death Knell Banish Me. So basically, the way this, okay, so I have to like go opposite in terms of how this card works to like make sure I'm not like misreading this. So you have to equip it, and it will give the unit that it is equipped to the text that is on its box, right? So the unit is what gets banished, not the Zero Drive itself. So it gets +2 and it gets Death Knell, you banish it. And then you can pay 3 energy and 1 power to banish the Zero Drive, and then play back the units that were banished with Zero Drive. So 4 and 1 power to equip like a functional, like backwards kind of Zonia. However, unlike Zonia that just like moves things, this will actually like let you get back the like effect that it brings with it. This is gonna do some stupid things where people are gonna equip it to cards that have like crazy come into play effects. I'm gonna mention it right now, but like Mind Splitter, I'm sure somebody's gonna be like, oh, I'm just gonna attach this to a Mind Splitter, make a 9 power that keeps like blasting your hand every time. And you can theoretically, like you can only do it once because as soon as you use it, the equipment itself is banished. It's a pretty hefty tax, but you get some amount of power out of it. I think it might just be too expensive. I think in Ornn, you might play it to just have like if you're playing this on Blue Ornn, and Blue Ornn then has like +3 because it's +2 and +1, and then like deflect 2 and also this effect that brings him back. He's gonna be like pretty hard to like keep off the battlefield. It just looks like a sizable investment to do that. It's like 4 and an energy to equip it, and then 3 energy to do it again. So it's like 7 and 3 power and 2 power. I'm skeptical, but I'm willing to allow that this will produce some stupid things. In Ornn, like if you play this and equip it, you're paying for the power cost, and then on the next turn when you use this ability, you pay the power cost again. Then it only costs 7 to give +2 to a unit and then save it once. Yeah, I'm not really like feeling it. But again, I'm always open to being wrong. And then the blue cards. We talked about Danger Zone last time when we talked about not the blue cards, the blue legend signature spells. We talked about Danger Zone in the red episode, but I'll talk about it here again. 1 power and 1 might, or 1 energy and 1 power as reaction speed to give you all your mechs +1. It's pretty solid. Often you're going to use this as a functional like oh my god, the orange card that blocks all damage. So like if your opponent's divvying damage in a way that like you die to Justies, like exact damage, then this will like save your stuff. It can also like let you take some bigger points if you have like a lot of small mechs, and you can repeat it again. Notably, this is one of the few spells that you cannot play in Kaisa, that I think you might like there. I think this card requires like a large board to be super, super useful. If you're playing this on like 3 units, you're reasonably happy. Like +3 might for 1, you'd be happy. Anything more than that is gravy. But I think I would like play this as a 1 of and side the 2 others for like linear matchups. Like if I'm playing against like Grand Stratagem decks or like Victor or anything like that, then sure. Otherwise, it's like okay. But I think I would just prefer like direct spell damage for most stuff. We talked about Ornn's equipment last time, but I'm happy to like go over it again, right? So we talked about they're all 4 energy and 2 power to equip to play, and then an additional power to equip. You can pay one of those presumably with Ornn, and they're all unique, so you can only have 1 copy in your deck. Forged Fire Cape gives +3, and when you attack or defend, you deal 2 damage to all enemy units here. I think Forged Fire Cape is great. +3 is solid, and then you get like a functional +5 on attack or defense, not against spells, and then you just get to like board wipe your opponent if they're on like a bunch of recruits or sand soldiers that are like equipped with small things or not equipped at all, or even like just regular 2 drops that have like 2 power. Forged Fire Cape is great. I really like it. It's gonna feel like a beating whenever it's on the board. You're gonna be really terrified of your opponent re-equipping this constantly. So yeah, solid. Rabadon's Death Crown. Spells and abilities deal +3 damage. Green doesn't have spell damage, and basically this reads as a stim pack for Bellows Breath, where it makes it deal 4 damage each time. And that is like the reason that you would want to play Bellows Breath in Ornn and not in Kaisa. I think it makes Bellows Breath like way better. But it's a weird thing where like for Bellows Breath to be good, or to be really, really good, you want Rabadons, and getting Rabadons is not always guaranteed. Still gives a +3, so it can only be so bad. I still think this is great. And there's the blue spell that we were looking at that you can hide. Wages of Pain. That it'll like up to 6 damage at a battlefield. So I think Rabadon's is solid. I still prefer Forge Fire. And then Shurelya's, your units here have ganking, so +2, and it gives ganking to a unit and ganking to all the other units. The times when this will give more than 1 unit ganking is relatively rare, but sometimes it'll hit 2. I think I like this like second best, which is a bit of an update from how I felt about it last week when I was looking at a lot of deck lists. I still think that like Forge Fire is by far my favorite and will like be super punitive, but Shurelya's will also be useful in certain matchups. The question is going to be more like, do you play like Forge Fire and Shurelya's main deck, and then you side Rabadons and the 3 Bellows for like token heavy matchups? Hard to tell, but I like all 3 of these, and reasonably you're going to play all 3 in some capacity in an Ornn deck. So, most definitely. And then we have Arcane Shift. Hell yeah. Arcane Shift, 3 energy, 1 power, action speed. You banish a friendly unit. Then its owner plays it, ignoring its cost, and you deal 3 damage to a unit at a battlefield, and you banish it. This card is going to do some really stupid things. You're in purple, you can already bounce Mind Splitters. Playing Mind Splitter with 3 Arcane Shift and like 3 Party Favors and 3 Fizz theoretically gives you like 12 Mind Splitters worth of card. Holy shit. Like, you're just going to destroy your opponent's hand. But often, you're just gonna like play this, banish a Fizz, replay it, deal 3 damage to a unit, and then if you had another Arcane Shift... Oh my god, my... Sorry. So, you're just gonna like start moving like banishes and returns and just do a bunch of stuff. Evidently, you can also use like Purple Annie in this deck, even though it's less accessible as a unit. I think Arcane Shift is like a prime reason to play Ezreal, and Ezreal himself has like discard 1, draw 2. So even if you're only playing it on your unit on like Purple Ezreal, and this card reads like pay 3 and a power to protect a unit, replay it, get its ability, and deal 3 damage, it's great. Be aware that because the second clause targets a unit at a battlefield, you can not so fast this in green. But otherwise, like, Hell yeah. This is the kind of card that I really want to be in Ezreal 4. And I think this is going to produce some like really cool deck shells that are going to just like recur units. This card is only going to get better the more units there are with like good enter the battlefield abilities. So yeah, like Arcane Shift. Jesus. And then I think the last card for today is Hostile Takeover. This is the Renata Glass signature spell. 5 cost and 2 power. You can hide this, which is, you know, pretty non-standard for blue-yellow. And take control of an enemy unit at a battlefield. You ready it, and it starts a combat if there are other enemy units. And you lose control of that unit and you recall it to base at the end of the turn. Oh yeah. So your opponent is on like what, like Lee Sin, holding a point with like a bunch of units. You take control of Lee Sin. He trades with some units, gets killed by the rest, and then the battlefield is like very small, and you can like go in and take it. Or your opponent is on like 3 units, like a 5 and 2 twos. You take control of the 5, you kill the 2s, you get a point, and then it recalls it to base. They can come back in and take stuff, but like you've done what you needed to do. This card is like pretty crazy because what it will do is it will often produce win states out of boards that you have no business winning. Notably, it's spell speed, but you can hide it. And if you hide it, you can like really salvage a battlefield that's questionable in the face of like an opponent trying to take it. So if you're sitting somewhere which is like Renata Glass, and you're like, oh no, come get my Renata Glass, she's gonna score a point next turn, and you hostile takeover, then your opponent is like in for a world of pain. You can't like really sneak a reconquest because you have to have a unit wherever this is hidden, and you can't really play it at that speed otherwise. So it's protected from being entirely crazy. But I really like hostile takeover, and I think it's a pretty unique effect that you're not seeing in a lot of the rest of the game. So yeah, keep an eye out on this. This is a reason to be in Renata Glass for sure. Really cool. Okay, so that covers it for blue, like the commons and like all the cards. And my general sense is that blue has a lot of mech cards that are really going to work for mech decks, and then it has some like pretty choice spells that you're happy to play in a lot of different places, like Wages. Some of my personal favorites are, you know, like I always like cards that let me build new things. So that doesn't mean they're going to be the strongest, but I think they're cool. What is happening? There we go. Okay, well, we're going to do it this way. Jace, I think Jace is one of the cards that we mentioned is going to produce like a ton of gear combos from now until the end of his legal tenure. And he is like on that Vanguard combo already. Or not the Armory. So yeah, just like a cool card. I think like is a bit of a meme, but when he hits, he'll hit like really hard. Ornn, I mean, listen, if you want to, he is what makes me want to play Ornn more than the Legend wants to make me play Ornn. I play a lot of Voltron decks in Magic, where I play like one big unit and I equip it with stuff and I go swing it at people. I think he is like the description of what that unit looks like, and equipping him with stuff like his signature equipment is going to be like really brutal. Especially like the ganking card. So if you equip like Shirelias to him, all of a sudden he's like a 7 cost, like a 7 might deflect to ganker. Yeah, I like Ornn so much. I think he's great. Wages, we talked about, I think is going to be like a really good card in Teemo. Again, surprised to not see that many Rift decks, like like the Rift deck samples from like the weekend event not playing it. I still think this is great. Like this looks bad. This looks great to me until somebody can prove to me that it is bad. Yeah. And then Arcane Shift, kind of like Jace, I think just opens up combos forever. Right now, Ezreal, I think, is maybe lacking some tools to like fully take off, but I think he's going to be fantastic in the next set. Can I make this work now? Or is it going to like die on me? Listen, we accept. So I felt like Calm and Fury really were doing a thing where a lot of their new heroes opened up entirely new directions. I feel like a lot of the blue cards also finesse game plans that already exist. They're good for hide mechanics, and the gold is, I think, going to be somewhat useful for decks that are not Kaisa, although they work for Kaisa as well. So keep an eye out on that. But I think like I'm not the most like blue leaning player in this game, but I think blue has like a pretty good suite of new spells, and the mech deck is hard for me to figure out right now because it feels like you might still just want to play Kaisa and have your spells be cheaper rather than your mechs be better. But maybe having, like Blue Rumble in that zone is going to be super useful. And I know there's going to be a lot of Rumbles going around because of the starter decks and people like getting those. So I'm curious to see, but it remains to be discussed. Uh, that's it for today. The plan for Wednesday is going to be to talk about Lee Sin. Well, a lot of requests in the last video to do a Lee Sin focus. And I think Lee Sin is one of the other like starter decks. So some people are on it, and it's hard to figure out like a shell of Lee Sin that is like really good right now. So I want to talk about that. And I think Wednesday is going to be, for like a week or two, the only video that I produce that is on the day of. So what you're going to be seeing that comes out next week is going to be pre-recorded tomorrow before I head out for the holidays. So I'm going to be talking about the body cards next, but there's not going to be coverage of any new events because I'm going to be recording it before there are any new events. And then I'll figure out what other champion I want to record for and see. So just keep that in mind. Otherwise, thanks as always for watching. It's still crazy to me that so many of you are here, and hopefully these improve in quality over time and I make less crazy mistakes in reading things like quick draw. But as always, let me know. And otherwise, I will see you on Wednesday virtually, and if not, happy holidays, and I hope you all take some time off for the holidays. Spend time with your friends and loved ones. Bye.